I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we look at which teams folded and which teams are holding on.
And a couple of teams that ran away. But first, a look at the SRBB headlines.
J. Johnstone, a two-time World Series champion with the Dodgers and the Yankees, died from complications from COVID-19. He was 74. Over his 20-year career, he was best known as baseball's merry prankster.
MLB announced a limited number of tickets will be available for the NLCS and World Series. Both will be played at the Grill in Arlington, Texas. Approximately 12,000 tickets will be available.
Twins' Alex Carrillo became the third player to make his Major League debut during the postseason since the World Series began in 1903. He also became the first player to start in his debut. He played right field and batted sixth in Game 2 of the Twins-Astros game. And he also became the first position player to get his first hit in the postseason.
The NFL closed the Tennessee Titans and Minnesota Viking facilities due to positive COVID-19 tests by Titan players and staff. Due to further positive tests, the Titans-Pittsburgh Steelers game has been rescheduled to Week 7. Additionally, Cam Newton of the Patriots tested positive, pushing the Patriots game back until Monday. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. Bob Gibson passed away after a battle with pancreatic cancer. He is the second prolific Cardinal to pass this season. Lou Brock passed in September. Pac Robert Gibson, born November 9, 1935 in Omaha, Nebraska, made his major league debut for the Cardinals versus the Dodgers on April 15, 1959. Gibby, or Hoot as he was known, made his final appearance on September 3, 1975 versus the Cubs, completing a 17-year career spent only with the Cardinals. In between, the Fireballer would amass 251 wins, a 2.91 ERA, a 1.118 WHIP, 2.89 FIP, 3,117 strikeouts, over 3,884.1 innings pitched. He led the league in 1968 with a 1.12 ERA, 13 shutouts. In 1969, he led the league with 28 complete games. He also earned 2 Cy Young Awards, was the NL MVP in 1968, 2-time World Series MVP, 9-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glove. He would strike out 17 Tigers in Game 1 of the 1968 World Series, a year he would be proclaimed the Pitcher of the Year. He was occasionally used as a pinch hitter. In 1970, he hit .303 and 109 at-bats. He threw a no-hitter in 1971 versus the eventual World Series champion Pirates. Right before his retirement in 1975, the Cardinals retired his number 45. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1981. He grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, the youngest of 7 children, becoming a star athlete in baseball, basketball, and track. He would go on to play basketball and baseball at Creighton University in Omaha, and even played a year with the Harlem Globetrotters before signing with the Cardinals. He has a statue in front of Busch Stadium, and a street on the north side of Rosenblatt Stadium in his hometown of Omaha was renamed Bob Gibson Boulevard. I got to see Bob Gibson play on TV, and Grandpa would say he was one of the pitchers that played the right way. He was one of those guys that took advantage of the unwritten rules. If you messed around, he threw at you. He didn't care. After the 1968 season, he and like Don Drysdale and Juan Marichal were so dominant that they lowered the mound from 15 inches to 10 inches because of the dominance. And it didn't matter. Bob Gibson was still dominant throughout the rest of his career. Wow, what a week. It was less like standard baseball playoffs and more like the first weekend of March Madness. One day we had 8 games, all on one day. It was 4, then it was 8, and then it was 4. It was supposed to be 5, but there was a rainout. Baseball fans were all asking, is this heaven? And couldn't say no, it's Iowa, because MLB didn't go to Iowa this year like they were supposed to. So it was pretty incredible, crazy season that begat a crazy postseason, or could be a crazy postseason with the bubble is coming up with division series. But let's take a look and see, what did we get wrong this last week? And let me start with one thing that was more something I got wrong last week's show. I mentioned that DJ LeMahieu had won the batting title, and he's the only player who has ever won the batting title in both the American and National.
Yeah, DJ LeMahieu, he continues to dominate, so that doesn't surprise me too much, although for him to be the only one, that's pretty pretty cool.
I thought that somebody may have done it along the way, because like Frank Robinson's the only player to be the MVP in both leagues. Somebody had to, but no, DJ LeMahieu is the only one. Now, looking at playoffs, we were a little wrong on a couple of things here. One of the first things we looked at was pitching matchups, and we said these are going to be huge matchups. And we mentioned Bieber versus Cole, Maeda versus Greinke, and Bauer versus Fried.
Going into that, we definitely thought the marquee matchup would be Bieber Fever against Garrett Cole.
Wow, were we wrong?
We were really wrong.
Well, let's put it, we were half wrong. Garrett Cole actually pitched really well through 7 innings.
That's true.
Gave up 2 runs, 6 hits. 1 home run, threw 105 pitches, struck out 13.
Yeah, he looked good. He was marquee.
Yeah, whereas Shane Bieber didn't look like the eventual Cy Young Award winner. He went 4 2/3, gave up 9 hits, 7 runs, 2 home runs, had a 13.50 ERA for the game, 105 pitches thrown, only struck out 7, which is unusual for him. Usually he struck out at least 10. He only gave up 7 home runs on the whole season, and he struck out 122, compared to Garrett Cole struck out 94 on the season and gave up 14 home runs. It just wasn't a good game. Or really, in the big picture, game 2 was a better game between the Indians and the Yankees, but the Yankees, they were the team that we talked about them being at the beginning of the year, that they just steamrolled the Indians.
Yeah, that second game, the Indians came in and they were neck and neck with the Yankees, but they just couldn't pull that out. But we had talked about earlier, too, how offense was not that great during the regular season. So in that first game, pretty much relied on Shane Bieber to get him through that game, and he didn't come through. Second game, maybe they were competing, but it didn't work out for them.
I wonder if they wish they had not moved up into the second place spot, swapped with the White Sox and taken on the A's instead of taking on the Yankees, and let the White Sox and the Yankees battle it out.
Yeah, that could have been a really interesting a game with the Yankees and the White Sox, just home run after home run.
Yeah, very well could have been. We'll talk about them in a minute with their series. The second matchup that we thought would be a good matchup, or one of the top matchups, actually wasn't bad, but also more one-sided, and that was Kenta Maeda and the Twins versus Zach Greinke and the Asterix. Maeda went 5 innings, only gave up 2 hits, no runs, struck out 5. So he didn't strike out a lot, but he didn't give up any runs. So he looked real good for the 5. Greinke went 4 innings, only gave up 2 hits and 1 run. He only had 1 strikeout. He walked 3. The wheels fell off Minnesota's bus right after Maeda left, and they never really came back around. They ended up losing both games, kind of going out with a whimper. The Twins did. They weren't the strong team, and the team that you thought would really come through and be a tough playoff team, they were not. They ended the season very quietly. In fact, kind of even forgot they played.
Yeah, they didn't get the memo that they were supposed to beat the Asterix, not let them win. But Minnesota has a postseason curse. They hadn't lost 2 games in a row at home this year before the wild card series, and they lost 2 games at home. And now they have at 18 consecutive postseason games that they've lost. 18.
Wow.
So the Minnesota's record playoff losing streak for any team in any of the 4 major North American professional sports. They lead in that category, not a category that you want to be number one. I thought it was interesting that the Twins began the postseason tied with the Chicago Blackhawks, who dropped 16 games in a row from 1975 to 1979. As for the MLB, the second longest streak belongs to the Boston Red Sox, who dropped 13 straight games from 1986 to 1995. So hopefully next year, for the Twins, they can get their act together and get rid of that streak. To me, the biggest one is you're the team that leads in all major North American sports. That's just crazy.
Yeah, that's insane to think that you just can't win something. And, we saw this actually a lot. You see this a lot in the playoffs where teams start off or they have a great season and they get to the playoffs and all the things that they could do during the regular season, the switch gets flipped to off and they can't do anything. And I honestly thought that this season would be different because in a regular season, you make it to the playoffs, you've already played 162 games plus whatever spring training was. So you're kind of tired. And unless you get on that roll at the right time, which the Yankees had their issues, they're on their roll, they're coming back together. But I figured, well, there's only 60 games. This probably would be better. And a lot of these teams have fallen apart. A big example of that, not only the Twins, obviously, but the Reds were another team that were carrying on issues. You figure Cincinnati was shut out in their series. First time in Major League history without scoring a run in a playoff series. They got shut out both games of the 2. The first game did go to Jennings, 13, and you mentioned the Red Sox a second ago. The last time the Reds lost from a walk-off in a playoff game, Carlton Fisk, 1975.
Oh, wow.
In Game 6, that iconic home run that you see all the time with him waving it to, stay in. That's the last time that they lost a walk-off game until Game 1 of their series. And this was one that we actually got right. This was the marquee matchup. Trevor Bauer versus Max Fried. Trevor goes 7 2/3, only gives up 2 hits, no runs, strikes out 12. Max Fried goes 7, gives up 6 hits, no runs, strikes out 5, looks really good. Neither side could really get anything going. Now, the Reds loaded the bases 2 or 3 times in this game and could never get anybody in, including in Jennings, which, remember, in Jennings, no man on second, no ghost runner. But they didn't need him because they were putting people on base.
They were just not bringing them home.
No, they couldn't get anybody in, but neither could Atlanta for that first part. And then it took former Diamondback Archie Bradley to come in the game and Freddie Freeman, NL MVP candidate for this season, to help take advantage of runners in scoring position. And with a bloop single with 1 out in the bottom of the 13th, the Braves won that game. It was an incredible game. I'll tell you, some of these playoffs, I watched a little bit of all of them that I could. This was one that I thought, I need to go do something. And I'd start to turn it off so I could go do something, figure I'd check in, and I couldn't because I wanted to see what was going to happen next. That became probably, out of all of the games, even the Dodger games, this became probably as Game 1, Braves and Reds, probably the best game of the wild card series.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I was watching that game and I needed to go to the store. I couldn't go because I was afraid I was going to miss something. 13 innings later, I didn't make it to the store, but I had to go after we knew who the winner was. This is the first time in postseason that 2 teams went into Jennings scoreless. So, yeah, both pitchers firing on all cylinders. Trevor Bauer was on fire, strutting his stuff off the mound. Max Fried looked really good. On the Reds side, they loaded the bases. They would get guys on, but there were also base running errors on their part, just silly mistakes that they probably could have had a run or 2, but because they weren't paying attention, or I think it was Kyle Farmer got caught up in a runoff and they lost that because there was a guy on third, he gets picked off, and they're done with the inning. So there was
little mental mistakes all along the way that really prevented them from winning that game or possibly winning that game. Next day, Game 2, even though the Braves won in a little more convincing fashion. Started off the same way. Luis Castillo started out for the Reds, went 5 1/3, only gave up 1 run. But after that, the Braves pretty much broke it open. But it was a shutout for most of that game, at least half of it. The second game started out exciting like that, pitcher's duel, but towards the end, Marcell Ozuna hit a monster shot. They were able to score 5 runs. Things kind of fell apart for the Reds after that.
Yeah, after Marcell Ozuna hit his home run and took a selfie while he was running to first base, yeah, the Reds were like, okay, we're done. He took a selfie.
Yeah, right. That's our cue. We're out of here. That was a great series. Really one that we can go by because I know I watched some of it, but I don't remember any of it because it was just that unmemorable, dememorable, is Tampa Bay over the Blue Jays.
I know Tampa Bay won.
Yeah, they won 2-0. There wasn't anything that grabbed you about that game. Tampa Bay showed why they were the top in the AL, and that was it. Boom.
Record in baseball. Yeah, the Blue Jays, I expected some firepower coming out from the young guys and just didn't see it. So, yeah, I don't remember much about those games other than that Tampa Bay won.
Yep.
Nothing exciting.
So that was it there. Honestly, the Marlins and the Cubs series, it seems like the Cubs, they were out there, didn't care. They're just having some fun. You looked in the dugout, they're getting beat. They're just laughing and joking like, yeah, whatever. If this is over, we get to go home and we don't have to deal with all this garbage.
Right.
And maybe that was the case. Maybe they just weren't interested in being there.
Yeah, well, I had mentioned, I think it was last week, how the Cubs, like Chris Bryant and Javi Baez, even Anthony Rizzo, who usually is a happy-go-lucky guy, when they had talked to the media on several different occasions, they were angry, just upset about when asked about, their offense or their defense or whatever it may be. And it's like, we don't care. We're just going to get out there. We're going to play. But maybe they just, at this point, really did not care and just were ready to go. And I did see a columnist from one of the papers in Chicago that said, oh, it's got to be the curse of Wrigley Field. I'm like, no, I think it was just the Cubs saying, you know what, we're ready. We want to get out of this place.
We're done. We've had enough. Which, who could blame them? It's been a strange season, and maybe they had it like we've mentioned. Is this a real championship? Is this, if you win the World Series, whoever's team wins the World Series, and it could, like if it's the Dodgers, there's still, there won't be a parade, but there'll still be that same feeling. We won a championship. Any team's fans will be that way. The only ones that are going to be insufferable, and it's going to be crazy, is going to be the Asterisks actually make it through and win it. And I think that if they get to the World Series, the other team should just go, never mind.
Yeah, just let them
have it. We're
not
afraid of you. We just don't want to play you. You guys cheat.
And then go find somebody that has, this is mean. I shouldn't say that. Go find somebody who has COVID, sneeze on the trophy. And
it's just a piece of metal.
When you were mentioning this, a real season, it made me think of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Is this a real life? Yep. Is this just fantasy?
I'm sure that Sixto Sanchez of the Marlins might be thinking that because he had a pretty incredible outing in Game 2 of their series. Game 1, they came back and won. The Cubs actually part of it. They had a rain out the next day. Played Game 2 on Friday. And Sixto Sanchez, a rookie, came out, pitched really well, and made the Marlins look good, making Don Mattingly look really good.
Yeah, the Marlins are using the nickname the bottom feeders as their motivation to win games. They know that they were the ones that got almost like the whole team had COVID, and they're the bottom feeders.
It was thanks to Philadelphia, one of the Philadelphia announcers who said you can't lose to the bottom feeders like the Marlins. And they have a T-shirt that was hanging up in the dugout that said bottom feeders. So that was another one of those series, though, that just seemed to happen. And if Sixto Sanchez hadn't been such a phenom performance there, or a standout performance, you probably wouldn't have even thought much about that series either because the Cubs just went away.
Yeah, they just folded. They were not the Cubs that you expected. I mean, they had Kyle Hendricks. He didn't pitch very well. And then Yu Darvish. So, yeah.
Well, Yu Darvish pitched okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
He pitched more like he did through the season. Is just no run support.
Yeah.
And once they gave things up, it was over. So they were done. Like, why'd you even bother? And then only 2 series, 1 per league, went the full 3 game. The Padres over the Cardinals, 2-1. The pitching for the Padres was better than expected. Chris Paddock pitched well. Davies pitched well. And then they did a bullpen game for game 3, and Stammen, who hadn't pitched that much in the last 10 years, came out and was pretty solid to start the game. And like I said, that was more of a bullpen game. But the big news for the Padres was in game 2, Fernando Tatis Jr. woke up and Slam Diego was reborn. He and Will Myers both had 2 home runs in the game. Machado had 1. They looked like the Padres we saw in the middle of the season when they were beating the Rangers by hitting 6 grand slams in a week.
Yeah, so I think with Fernando Tatis Jr., the addition of Fernando Tatis Sr. was a big help because he came and helped his boy out with his swing. I don't know that he needed help with his swing, but whatever it was, having dad there was a good luck charm. He is in the bubble in Texas, so he's keeping him along with him. But I think that first game with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals won, I think a lot of people were surprised and maybe even hopeful that the Padres could go down.
I found myself rooting for the Cardinals at one point in that game. Before, with that series, I didn't really care who came out of it. I think part of me was I wasn't crazy about seeing another Dodgers-Padres series this soon. I thought,
I agree with that.
Let them match up, especially when they're the top 2 teams in the National League. I thought, let them match up towards the end, maybe for the championship series. But I found myself rooting for the Cardinals over the Padres. And maybe part of it is, it's just like in 2017, up until the Asterisks went to, I think even up to the World Series, I didn't have that many issues with the Asterisks.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that.
Team was fine. I didn't have any issues with them. And then they started acting like punks in the World Series. And if it was just, they were just a better team playing and you could, and you saw it, I can be fine with that, even if it's my team getting beat. But they were just being jerks about stuff. And the things that they did that just was like, come on. Anyway, so I kind of got a little of that. The Padres haven't reached that point with me completely yet. To me, the only one that I have an issue with and that can stand next to Bregman when the bus comes by is Trent Grisham. We're going to see them, and we'll talk about that coming up. But the Padres take out the Cardinals. That was another one that the Padres looked like the Padres in the last 2 games. That Slam Diego feel. They rolled over the Cardinals as much as you wanted to see a good game out of all that. There wasn't bad baseball. It was just the Padres were clearly the better team. And then the other series that really goes to something we got wrong. And we'll go into an overall view of things we got wrong in this wild card round in just a second. The A's and the White Sox, they went 3 games as well.
Our team that we thought was going to move on, the White Sox, they did not move on. We got that wrong, which surprises me. I really thought that just looking at the season, they were, offensively really good. Pitching wise looked good. And even in the first game, they had Lucas Giolito, who had a no-hitter through, I think it was the 7th inning. So it really looked like, okay, these are the guys that are going to go. And it didn't happen.
No, I think some of it has to do with playing in Oakland. It's a hard stadium to play in.
Yeah, it's an odd park, and it's not very pretty. And
the White Sox really just couldn't hit there. And then they had pitching issues. Dallas Keuchel didn't pitch well in game 2. And in game 3, they went through 6 pitchers in the first 4 innings. I missed something at the beginning. Come back in, and I thought that the game must have already been over because they were talking about crocheting or knitting or something. And then I realized that they were talking about the pitcher, Crochet, had been pulled due to injury, hadn't pitched very much. And what a bummer it was that they had to pull him out. And then I realized that was the guy who replaced him. The relief pitcher's name is Bummer. He came in, gave up 3 home runs. Bummer.
Yeah, White Sox had injuries during that game. Eloy Jimenez had a foot injury that he had been dealing with. He came out of the game. You mentioned Crochet. He left the game with arm soreness. The starting pitcher had left after 15 pitches. In that third game, they used 9 pitchers.
And 6 in the first 4 innings.
Right.
I mean, that was just crazy how things fell apart. And the A's didn't look all that great. They just were able to take advantage of the opportunities provided them by the White Sox having an off game. Of course, that now means that series pick is done. The White Sox were eliminated. But the bigger thing was how many Central teams of either the NL or the AL made it out of the wild card?
0.
That's right. Nada. Not a one. It's crazy to look at it because I know I had the Dodgers playing the Cardinals.
Right.
And the Cubs playing the Padres in the division series. Instead, it's the Dodgers playing the Padres and the Marlins playing the Braves. And then the Dodgers and the Padres in the championship series, which we know can't happen because they're playing this round. And then Twins, Rays, and White Sox. Nope. Those were my picks for the division series. Nope. Of that, only one of those teams made it through. I had an all Central, because I thought those teams were going to be the strongest teams. The Twins and the White Sox playing it out for the ALCS and the White Sox moving forward. So while the Padres can still make it, not in the way that I thought they would. And nobody that I picked, with the exception of the Rays, made it on to the division series.
Yeah, I have just forgotten about my picks. They just went out the window.
I watched them go completely sideways.
Yeah.
And not they. Yeah. Oh well.
And I really had more expectations for the Twins and the White Sox. Cleveland, you look at their pitching and think, well, they could dominate in their pitching going forward, and it just wasn't to be. And now we have true division series in everywhere. So
right, the West versus the West, the East versus the East on both sides, AL and NL.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting going forward. But yeah, my pick, my World Series pick is gone. So now what do I do?
Well, only half of it.
Only half of it. That's true. I have to recalibrate my picks.
So the crazy part now is bubble play for the division series. And while some of them won't be that big of a deal, Yankees and Rays will be down at Petco in San Diego. It'll be a little weird because we are familiar with Petco with the Dodgers and Padres playing each other. It'll probably be weird at first to watch the National League teams either in Houston or like the Dodgers up in Arlington. But I don't think that'll be as strange, except that they're not playing the teams that are the home teams in both of those stadiums. The weirdest one, and I wonder if it's weird more because of the 2 teams that are there, and maybe if it had been swapped and the Yankees and the Rays were there, it may not seem, well, the Yankees probably still would have been weird, but the A's and the Asterix at Dodger Stadium. Both teams have history there.
Yes.
One better than the other one if you look at it from their perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, the A's have won there. I mean, back in the early 70s, they played the Dodgers in the World Series and they won in the Ravine. But one of the biggest memories of all time does not favor the A's. It's the 1988 Kirk Gibson walk-off.
Yeah, game 1. Yeah. This is probably the ironic series of the postseason so far, because you have the A's, whose pitcher, Mike Fiers, who used to be an Astro, was the whistleblower. And then you just have the Asterix, who are, well, we know about the Asterix. So, and
before we
being
talk more about this, talk about all these games in futility that have been played, like the Twins and the Reds and that. The A's, this is the first time they've won an elimination game since 1973. So while they've won in the past, when they won the World Series in 74, not an elimination game. 1989, not an elimination game. So this is the first time since 1973 that they've won an elimination game. And they've been to the playoffs quite a few times.
Yeah, they won that Game 7 of the 1973 World Series versus the Mets. So, yeah, this is a good streak that they snap for the A's.
The Asterisks are starting to pick up and play better baseball than they had been. They'd had slumps and injury issues. But I almost feel like most Dodger fans would rather burn down Dodger Stadium than let the Asterisks celebrate on their field again should they beat the A's. Now, This time it's a 5-game series, so they're going to have to win 3. It's not a quick boom, boom. The Asterisks don't have great pitching overall. Greinke and Valdez are probably their 2 top guys. McCullers, not bad, and McCullers will pitch. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchups. I think we should talk and find out how the Dodgers got through and what's going to happen with them before we get into the rest of the playoff scenarios.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
So it was a great week for the 2020 Dodgers. Bittersweet for the Dodgers organization as a whole.
The Dodger family mourns the loss of 2 Dodger greats. Sweet Lou Johnson, who helped the Dodgers win the 1965 World Series with a key home run, died on October 1st at the age of 86. Johnson played 17 seasons with the Los Angeles Angels, Chicago Cubs, Milwaukee Braves, and the Cleveland Indians. He played in 677 games and hit .258 with 48 homers and 232 RBIs in his career. He later joined the Dodger organization after he was playing as a part of the public relations team. And Ron Peronowski, the left-handed weapon of the Dodgers bullpen who helped them win a pair of World Series championships in the 1960s, died October 2nd in Vero Beach, Florida, after a long illness. He was 84. Peronowski played in the major leagues from 1961 to 1973 for the Dodgers, the Twins, the Tigers, and the Angels. He had a career record of 79 and 74 with 178 saves and a 2.79 ERA. Our condolences to both the Johnson and Peronowski families.
You know, Ron Peronowski was a pitching coach for the Dodgers for a long time, so he was around there. And I remember Grandpa talking about him. Oh, yeah, I saw him pitch here, there. And you may have heard these stories from Mom or Uncle Ron or Grandpa about them going to the Coliseum to watch the Dodgers play when they first moved out here. And Peronowski was one of those guys that they got to see pitch. And as a pitching coach, it would come up when I would watch games with Grandpa that somebody they'd been able to see play. So, yeah, sad day. Seems like that's been going around this year. In the league, different teams have lost iconic players of their past. The Dodgers get into the playoffs, and as we mentioned earlier, it felt like they flipped that switch to off. Now, honestly, throughout the season, they were incredible offensively, unless you were paying a lot of attention to them, and then it never felt like that, or not as often. When you looked at the run differential of like plus 136, it didn't seem like they outscored their opponents the way that they did.
Or hit as many home runs.
Right. And they led the league in home runs for the season. They had more home runs in 60 games than they had the whole 1988 season.
Yeah.
For those of us who've been paying a lot of attention, it seems like they stumbled through the season at time. Even though they were the best team in baseball, we saw Cody stumbling, Max stumbling. Normally when those guys are happening and you have somebody like Austin Barnes, who normally is mediocre, he has his ups and his downs, but mostly he's down kind of average or slightly below average, and he's one of the top hitters on the team, you think, oh, okay, this is just an off season. But that wasn't the case, obviously. And when they went into the first game of the series versus the Brewers, people on Twitter were going, oh, okay, we're back to playoff Dodgers because we can do all that during the regular season, but we're not doing anything in the postseason.
Yeah, the Dodgers, they needed to come in. The Brewers came into Dodger Stadium. Like you said, it's a 3-game series, and the Dodgers really needed to win the 2 games just to get it out of the way. Now, as they played, a thought came to me. I know we've talked about it and it doesn't work out, I guess, mathematically, but there were times where I thought, why are the Dodgers even playing the Brewers? Why are we even here? But they were.
Well, more because the Brewers were a sub 500 team all season. And even if they were to beat the Dodgers in this series, Division Series, Championship Series, and World Series, if they won them, they still wouldn't have won as many games in their season with the postseason as the Dodgers did in just the regular season.
Yeah. The first game, Dodgers won 4-2. Walker Buehler was on the mound. He pitched 4 innings, which I think was probably the plan. I don't know that they wanted him to go any longer because of the blister, and he went 4 innings.
I didn't get the feeling that the blister was that big of a deal.
Oh, really?
From watching the ESPN coverage,
they only showed close-ups of it like every inning.
And did Eduardo Perez, did it seem to you like he had the rule book right in front of him?
Yes, highlighted. He had it tabbed. It
bold.
was.
He had it printed out. He had it printed out on cue cards, and he read it out in front of him because he had the exact rule subsection page in the rule book. Who wrote the rule?
Yeah. Yeah, he was calling out Walker Buehler, and it was really odd. And he made the comment, well, the Brewers aren't contesting. And I thought, well, are you going to contest? I mean, are you going to turn the Dodgers in? I mean, what's going on here? It was really an odd moment. Well, I'm not a big Eduardo Perez fan anyway. He's boring.
I'm not really a big fan of his either. The way that he... Somebody look, it looks like he's got super glue on his finger.
Yeah.
Are you listening, Commissioner Manfred? He doesn't have, just like, why make such a big point of it? And, somebody did come along and say, well, maybe, who was it? Did Kirkjian or Carl Ravitch or one of them said, well, maybe they talked to him about it before the game and the umpires are okay. Yeah, but the rule is that this is the thing,
Well, even if he had super glue on his blister, that's not gonna be, if it's dried, it's not gonna be sticky.
Well, it's not that new skin stuff, and they said anything, but he read the rule. You can't put anything, and you can't put tape, and you can't you can't do nothing to it. You can't put super glue on it, anything. Didn't you hear what I read in the rule book?
And it really overshadowed.
It became, but I thought, are you calling him out? And I kept waiting for the New York guys to call the umps over and talk to him through the headsets and go, yeah, you need to go out and look at this.
Yeah.
And then for a little bit, it seemed like they'd gotten away from it because they left it because the inning ended. And they said, we'll talk about it when we come back. And then they didn't talk about it for a little bit. And then they had Alden Gonzalez, I think it is.
Yeah,
he was right there in the park. And they asked him about it. And he played it. He didn't say they didn't do that, but he's like, I don't know. I wouldn't think they didn't. If they did, he backed up with that saying, hey, they would have talked to the umpires about it. They wouldn't have. But they kept looking at him like, what do you spend less time with that? It's like.
Yeah, extreme close-ups of his finger.
Anytime
they had the opportunity. And he had 8 strikeouts.
Oh, yeah. He had 8 strikeouts, only gave 2 runs and 3 hits. He pitched well, but it's probably because he had something. He has illegal substance on his finger. And and it was like, are you kidding me? Eduardo Perez, who was directing the show that night from the trailer out behind? Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa. They were back there because by then they probably were.
Yeah, they were done.
They could have come in early, and they were directing the coverage of the Dodgers game. So they were like, "Oh, look in there! They're cheating! They're cheating! They're cheating!" All right, I'll tell everybody. What was that rule again, Alex?
Yeah, sorry, it was very odd.
I'm not real good at my Eduardo Perez impersonation.
I actually like it better than his own voice.
So pitching wise, Julio Urias came in, pitched the most innings out of the rest of them. Blake Trinan, Kenley Jansen all came in, shut them down, no run for the rest of the game. Honestly, for the Brewers, Brent Suter, I think he actually even apologized afterwards and said, I let my team down. I didn't pitch very well.
Yeah, it was not a good game.
Only went an inning and 2/3, gave up 3 hits, 3 runs. Only 1 home run in that game, and that was given up by Freddie Peralta of the Brewers to Corey Seager. For the Dodgers, there was Orlando Arcia got a home run off of Walker Buehler.
Right, off of Buehler.
Walker Buehler gave up that home run. Mookie started off the game with a double. Next at bat, another double. So 2 for 4, did his best to get in there. Corey, of course, had the home run, and AJ came in and hit a double to try to get things going.
Yeah, it's a good game overall, other than the close-ups that we had to endure of Walker's finger and having to listen to ESPN crew.
I have a mute button.
Yeah, I did mute that.
Tim Kirkjian, who is a wealth of baseball knowledge, he's not the guy that I want on a broadcast like that. If they bring him in for a moment, like a field reporter kind of thing, like who is it? Like Buster Olney is never part of the 3 all the time. They go to him and he brings up some. Tim Kirkjian's a guy that you want to sit in a wood paneled room with that reeks of history, books on the wall, and he tells you stories of baseball history and lore because he's got all that information. But to listen to him during the game, there were moments that were great, and other times he is excited about it. He got kind of giggly a couple of times, and I'm like, Tim, no, stop.
Yeah, I was laughing to himself. And I don't know if it makes it I'm sure it's odd because they're all in different places, so they're not together.
Well,
but I think
and Ravitch were in the same place.
Oh, that's true.
They were on other sides of an anchor desk.
Yeah, that's true. They were.
Eduardo Perez was in Florida, I think.
With his rule book.
And Bregman and Correa in his ear.
Well, we go on.
Yes, almighty Carlos Correa, I will do whatever you tell me to do.
We go on to game 2. Same broadcasters. Little better results from the broadcasters, at least, because we had a pitching duel. It was Kershaw Day, and for the Brewers, it was Brandon Woodruff, and they were going along really well. Clayton looked amazing. Woodruff was looking good until Austin Barnes came up, and there was a call. It was in the 5th, and it was a pitch that was called a ball, and it was a ball. And Woodruff admits that later, but 2 pitches later, Cuz hits a single to give the Dodgers a 1-0 lead, and then Mookie Betts doubles home 2 runs, and that knocked Woodruff out of the game. He was not happy, and in fact, he got ejected from the game after saying some really colorful buzzwords to the home plate umpire because it was the one pitch to Austin Barnes that unraveled what was a really good game for him had started.
Yeah, he was looking really good over the 4 2/3 at the beginning. He was matching Clayton pitch for pitch in that. And it was at that point, once Cuz was on, letting that pitch in his head, he was having to pitch out of the stretch, which he hadn't had to do. And it really changed his dynamic. And he just wasn't able to hold on. I mean, he struck out 9 in those 4 innings. I mean, obviously Clayton had the better night. He didn't give up any runs, unlike the 3 that Woodruff would end up giving up. Only 3 hits for Kershaw, 13 strikeouts. So at the beginning, you really were wondering what's going to happen. And I believe that the Dodgers showed they took advantage of the opportunities. But if Woodruff doesn't collapse at that point, you may have to wait farther down until you get into the bullpen before anything really happens.
Yeah, and there were some things like a bobble on Jed Jerko's part that I think it put Cody Bellinger on base, and that just began the whole unraveling because, before he didn't really have anybody on base. And you do have to watch the Dodgers because, you don't even, it's not just Mookie Betts who's fast. Chris Taylor is good on the base pads. Cody, Austin. There's a lot of guys that are, they're fast. And so then he had his focus shifted. And of course, Counsell was going to bring in Hader, and that didn't work out because then their catcher, who I guess had a sprained thumb prior to catching.
Right, Nottingham.
But he was out of the game after Hader threw a
Yeah, you're like
pitch.
wondering what happened, because even without any context to why all of a sudden he had an issue. And when guys throw hard, it could hit a certain way. But you're like, that didn't look like a problem. Then you find out that he had his thumb had been pulled back at some point, kind of overextended or something, and that just aggravated the problem. And Hader's he's one of those guys that's like either he's right on it and unstoppable, kind of like Kenley.
Yeah.
When he's on it, you're not going to get past him. But if he's off a little bit, most of the damage was all done to Woodruff.
Yeah.
CT3, 2 for 3 that day. Cuz 2 for 3 with the RBI. It was Mookie who had 2 RBIs in the game off of a double that he hit. So he was a doubles machine. Otherwise, not a lot of action. There were a couple other hits here or there, but it wasn't like the steamroller that we want the Dodgers to be, that they're capable of being. And the numbers show that they can be and were. So now the question is, the Brewers weren't a great team anyway. We talked about it. They were sub 500. At the end of the season, they played well enough, and the rest of the Central played poorly enough that they were able to, so it wasn't like when I looked at the Central, when I looked at the Reds seemed to be surging, and they had pitching. They were still, and they had guys who could get hot. They had players that could be offensive, offensively, they could be tough. So I gave them the benefit of the doubt. The Cubs very well could have, but like we said, they kind of gave up. The Brewers, out of all of that group, was not a team that I expected much out of, and what they gave the Dodgers was more than I thought that they would give. I didn't think they were just going to roll over.
Right, and Christian Yelich, who hadn't been hitting at all during the season, actually got some good hits during the series. But the Dodgers came in, they did what they needed to do, win in 2 games. It wasn't in dramatic fashion, which is fine. We didn't need Kenley on the mound, and with it being a 1-run game or something like that.
No, there didn't need to be any of that. And honestly, it's better that way, that they had low-key outings.
Yeah.
Because now the division series is probably going to be the biggest series in the National League on the way to the World Series. And not to say that whoever comes out of Houston with the Braves and the Marlins isn't going to be a good opponent, but these are the 2 best teams in the National League that are now going to match up. And the Dodgers played in such fashion that it doesn't feel like that they really got worn out. Buehler and Kershaw started the first 2 games of the wild card. They're slated to go the first 2 of the division series. And then after that, there's no schedule. It's all TBD. The Padres, who they'll take on, are TBD from game 1 because they don't know what's going to happen. Clevenger might be coming back. That's the story. He looks like he's ready. Dinelson Lamet doesn't look like he's ready or close enough to ready to bring him in.
Yeah, and he hasn't thrown off of a mound yet. So they're both in Texas. I think Clevenger probably, if he's going to pitch, it'll be Clevenger. I don't think Lamet will.
They start the series on Tuesday of the week, and the rosters aren't due until like Tuesday morning. So it won't be till Tuesday morning that we'll find out who's on the roster. So does Clevenger make it? Does Lamet make it? We won't know till then. Also, we won't know how the roster changes for the Dodgers probably till then. What I do expect to see now is probably, and this is where we can admit our mistakes again, I think Dylan Floro is probably back on the roster, and Terrence Gore, who was probably the trade-off. So here, let's just go back to the beginning of things we got wrong. When we talked about the roster for the wild card series, we expected Gavin Lux and
Alex
Alex
Wood.
Wood
Yeah.
to be on the roster just because they were there at the end. They both contribute somewhat. They're not great. You said you didn't think they should be on there. And of course I pushed you. Was that personal bias or because they really, and you basically, I think, admitted that it's a little of both. That you didn't really feel from a baseball standpoint they believed it, and you don't like either one of them. And could both of them please be traded somewhere, anywhere?
Together.
You'd be fine with a clubhouse attendant and a groundskeeper in return just to get them out of there.
Hot dog vendor. Yeah, I think, yeah, I've obviously there's bias. I'm not shy about those two guys, but yeah, being on the wild card roster, I just didn't see it happening. But because I know and have watched how the Dodgers work when it comes to rosters, I thought, yeah, they're going to be on there.
Yeah, it did seem reasonable that they would be on there, but they weren't.
They weren't, I know.
And so neither of those guys were on there. Terrence Gore, who was a speedster, was brought on more for pinch running, which they never needed. The surprise was Dylan Floro, who had actually been pretty solid. He wasn't on the roster for the wild card.
Yeah, that was a big surprise because Dylan Floro has been solid throughout the season, and he was upset that he was not on the roster. And as Dave Roberts said, rightfully so. So he will be on the roster for the division series.
Well, pitching's going to be a bigger thing. This is why we thought Cleveland would potentially go farther than they did, was because we thought that they had great pitching. They had 3 good starters that they could have run out and surprised them. Obviously, that didn't happen. The idea was right. The concept, the theory was correct. Having 3 great pitchers, boom, 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 can really make a difference, especially because teams haven't seen the best every game. They get a game off here or there. Now the Dodgers go into this. We know that Buehler and Kershaw are 1 and 2. Don't know anything after that. We know the Padres are all TBD. Nothing's been announced yet. I don't even think they know who's on their roster other than the usual suspect. But pitching-wise, Paddock pitched really well. Davies pitched pretty well. The bullpen came in and did, but they're not playing the Cardinals. They're playing the Dodgers, who took the season series with them. And while they can out-hit the Dodgers, the question is, can they out-pitch them? And while we both picked the Padres to move on to the World Series, it's more because of the Dodgers than it is because of the Padres.
Right. As much as I'd love to see the Dodgers continue on, they're really going to have to be on their game. Series is going to be contentious because of the Padres more so than the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers have a job to do. They're there to win, and I think they'll go about it very methodically, whereas just from the regular season games that we saw the Dodgers and the Padres, a lot of trash talk, a lot of bat flipping, like extra, they were extreme in the things that they did. So it's going to be one to watch. Obviously, I'll be watching every game, but it will be, I think it's going to be one that to the Dodgers, I don't think they see the Padres as big a rival as the Padres see the Dodgers.
Yeah, this means more for the Padres than it does the Dodgers. And you got to give it to them. The Padres, it's been a long time since they've been in the postseason. So that's one big deal for them. And I wonder about this with the bat flips and all that. You have a younger team overall, and Tatis Jr. is the guy who is kind of the leader, even though he's not the youngest, but one of the youngest there. He's kind of the leader of the team. And even the older guys on the team, Hosmer, Moreland, they just roll along with it because there's a lot of energy and it's hard to not get sucked into that energy.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, we got, even Manny Machado is getting in on the whole thing. And he has said previously when the first season he played with the Padres, they were playing at Dodger Stadium, and some fan was heckling him, and he said, well, we'll win a World Series before your team does. And I was thinking about that quote because this past week, because we don't know. It could happen. I picked the Padres to go on, so I'm not going to be rooting for them. But
you picked the Padres to fulfill Manny Machado's words.
Now, not to fulfill it, because when I picked it, I didn't think about it. If I had thought about that quote and that incident, I wouldn't have picked it.
What do they say about the law? What do they say when you break the law and you go, I didn't know that was against the law? Ignorance is no excuse. Because you knew about it. You just chose to hide it.
Right.
And now that you're called out on it.
We'll see how it goes. I think for the Dodgers, too, I want to mention Jock Peterson and his family are in Texas. So Jocelyn and his family are there. So he will most likely be on the roster. He has done well in the postseason. So we'll see if he does make the roster, what role he plays. If he continues to do well in the postseason. But I don't think that we will see Matt Beatty. I think he probably will not be on the roster. He was on the wild card roster.
Which was kind of a surprise.
Right, but didn't play. And then Terrence Gore, you mentioned him. I think he was there probably for Justin Turner, I think was maybe where he could have been used, but didn't need him.
But it would have been more pinch running, and then Matt Beatty may have gone into play, and they would have moved people around to cover third. But they had Edwin Rios too. Why would they need to?
Yeah,
I don't know. There was a lot of things there, but there was a strategy to it, and they knew that if they just won in 2 games, it wasn't going to be a big deal. And I'm sure they explained that to Dylan Floro as well. So pitching, and the big thing about this is that we look at the bubble. The bubble's one thing, but the pitching these first 2 series, actually in all of them, but especially these first 2 series, you're going to play 5 straight games. There's not going to be any days off, and unless it starts raining here in Southern California, where we're still having heat waves. We've been up around 90.
That's fall weather.
We haven't got to fall weather yet. We keep staying up a bit 90s and above.
No sweaters and pumpkin spice yet.
No, you got pumpkin spice. It's just, it's hard to have the warm pumpkin spice like you would think. Now it's like ice pumpkin spice. Tasty Freeze, they have pumpkin spice dipped cones.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So you can get pumpkin spice everywhere.
Perfect for 90 degree weather.
It is 100 degrees. Let's go get some pumpkin spice dipped cones. So unless there's rain, which is doubtful in Southern California, there'll be no postponements. The only thing would be is if another fire starts up and a lot of haze. And in Texas, they're both inside. So you're going to play, the National League play is going to Tuesday to Saturday. The American League is going to play Monday to Friday. Unless you win the 3, you got to win 3 in this round because it's best of 5. And so the key, once again, is sweep.
Yeah.
Don't play the full 5-game series.
Definitely a sweep, because I know past we've seen in these 5-game series where Clayton Kershaw started a game, and then if it did go 5, there's possibility he's coming out of the bullpen. We've seen that in the past. We don't want that to happen. Not that he doesn't, he did okay out of the bullpen. But yeah, the Dodgers really need to go in, dominate. Walker Buehler needs to continue his postseason strikeout record.
Watch out for that blister.
It is interesting that I'm not sure who did the housing arrangements, but the Dodgers and the Padres are staying in the same hotel in Arlington. And I saw Will Myers said, he plays for the Padres. He said, yeah, everybody's wearing a mask, so you can't really tell who they are. And we're not here to socialize. But I'm thinking, if I see a tall guy with the mask on and red hair, I know exactly who that is.
Right.
Or, another red hair, Justin Turner, or, you're just going to know. So his comment was, and the Rays and the Yankees are staying in the same hotel in San Diego. I'm not, again, who put that together? You just don't want Aaron Boone and
Kevin Cash.
Kevin Cash. Yes. I had to think about it for a minute because I was like, Brian, Kevin, is it Cash? Cashman? The two of them meeting up somewhere poolside.
Those guys are probably like, professional wrestlers. They're out there in the ring and they hate each other, and then they get back to the locker room and they're best friends, making dinner plans. Families are going to get together this weekend to go see the other guy's new pool. All right, so let's go and take a look at the other matchups.
We talked about Tampa Bay and the Yankees. The Yankees in the regular season were 2-8. We did have the dust up Willis Chapman, who was not suspended yet, which I still think is crazy because he's a repeat offender, but that's okay. Free Joe Kelly. And it's going to be a good one because I really think that the Yankees have this is revenge for the regular season and how they played against the Rays. And will the Rays pitching, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Charlie Morton, how are they going to come out against a Yankees team that seems to hit home runs every other batter? And DJ LeMahieu is just a force.
Who hits everything.
He just hits everything, right? This will be a good matchup. With the Yankees playing the way they're playing right now, I would venture to say I think the Yankees might pull this series out.
Yeah, I would think that they're probably the odds-on favorite as far as that goes. And it's hard to see past that when Aaron Judge I was watching The Natural the other day, and they were talking about Roy Hobbs. Whenever he wants to hit, he hits it. He wants a triple, he hits a triple. A double, he hits a double. Aaron Judge, he hits a home run whenever he wants to hit one.
Yeah.
He just does it. And he's lucky because the way that they bat, DJ LeMahieu's probably on base, so he's going to get a 2-run home run at least.
Yep. They
have other players on that team. When you look at the rosters of the Yankees and the Rays, it's like the Yankees are the team, who everybody is, pretty much.
Right.
The Rays are a team that you don't know who anybody is.
Yeah.
Except maybe G-Man Choi. And the only reason you know him is because it's kind of a fun name, G-Man. Blake Snell with the Cy Young last year. Charlie Morton, who's been around for a while, got out of the Asterix situation. So he's more of a survivor than a pitcher. The other guys that are coming up, Brandon Lau, guys like that, you might have heard a name here or there, but they're still, when you look at them and you watch that, you're not as readily involved. They're a team you need your program for.
Like, who is that?
The Yankees come up, you have a little better idea of who many of them are, and you probably heard a name. Yeah. Luke Voigt looks like a guy who should be a Yankee.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd agree. They are going to throw, so Cole will start the game one. They're going to throw Devi Garcia, who's a rookie, in game 2 of that series versus Glasnow. And then their other top pitcher, Masahiro Tanaka, for the Yankees will take on Charlie Morton in game 3. After that, it's all up in the air. So we'll see how that one goes. I agree, though, that that's probably based on how the Yankees are playing right now, that unless the Tampa Bay pitchers can shut them down and obviously the Tampa Bay bats can get to these pitchers, it's going to be a short series.
Yeah.
And the Yankees will settle in and wait for whoever's going to come down from the ravine to play at Petco versus them. Let's look now at the other Eastern battle, the Marlins and the Braves. Sandy Alcantara is going to start up things with them versus Max Fried for the Braves. The Braves have the potential of offensively to blow people away. Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr., Marcell Ozuna.
Yeah.
Ozzie Albies.
Yep. Yeah, that was one thing I'm thinking about in this series. Is Atlanta going to have another 20-plus run game against the Marlins? Will the Braves pitching, will they continue to dominate as they did against the Reds? I think maybe the Marlins, if they continue with this mindset of the bottom feeders going into the postseason, could be a really good series for both of them. But the Marlins, you look at what happened with them. They had 17 players that had got coronavirus, And then they kind of, they hodgepodge, got different veterans to come in and play with the younger guys. And so, yeah, you just have a guy here and, like they got Starley Marte at the trade deadline. I heard he has a broken pinky. Don't know how that will. Yeah. So I think that time that he had after they won the series against the Cubs, I think they were waiting for the swelling to go down. And then I think he plays with a brace.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no rules in the rule book that says that he can't have a Band-Aid or another kind of thing on his finger because he's not a pitcher. He could put all the super glue, a whole gorilla glue right on that finger or that hand. Glue them all together.
So I thought, going into the series against the Cubs, that was a big question mark with Starley Marte because he had a close call at the plate, had left ear contusion, and then he broke his pinky finger. But he seems to just be plugging along, and he's going to be in the lineup, which is big for the Marlins because he's his spark plug in their lineup. So
yeah, he definitely is somebody they need. The other question will be is Sixto Sanchez for the Marlins. Will he pitch as well as he did? I think he's slated for Game 3. And then another rookie, Ian Anderson, who pitched real well in Game 2 of the series versus the Reds and helped blank the Reds, as we talked about earlier. So will these guys continue to play up to that level? It's the playoffs, and for some reason, it gets in people's heads. It's not just, let's just go play baseball and do what we can do.
Aaron Judge said the regular season, the preseason, and this postseason is the real season.
That it is. All right, so let's wrap it up today. We started in on this before we talked about the Dodgers. Let's end up with probably from the standpoint of a toss-up. This is one that we kind of believe the Braves are the better team versus the Marlins. We believe that the Yankees are going to win that. We believe the Dodgers are the stronger team versus the Padres, regardless of who we pick to win in each of these. This one's the toughest one because, like we said, they're playing in the Ravine, near and dear to our hearts as the home of the Dodgers. And neither one of these teams have endeared themselves to Dodger fans.
No.
Both teams are streaky. Both teams can go off and blow somebody out, but you never know which. And they both can look like the worst team in baseball, playing wise. The Asterisks look like the worst team in baseball just in general.
Right, forever
and everything.
Yep.
So the Asterisks and the A's, they'll match up. First game out will be Chris Bassett versus Lance McCullers. And then they're only so far, both teams are only projecting out to Game 2 with Framber Valdez and Sean Manaea. The bigger thing, I think, in this series is the attitude. And the A's don't seem to be carrying an attitude into this game like the Asterisks.
Yeah, thanks to Carlos Correa, who after beating the Twins in the wild card, he had this to say: I know a lot of people are mad. I know a lot of people don't want to see us here, but what are they going to say now? We're a solid team. We play great baseball and we won a series on the road in Minnesota. So what are they going to say now? I say, you're a cheater, Carlos Correa, and you always will be.
And you need to shut up and play.
He's the only one other than Josh Reddick who just needs to just be quiet all the time, along with his wife, and just play baseball. You don't hear Bregman or Altuve. I haven't, other than when they came out at that goofy press conference and said, what we did is bad, and then go sit down. No apology, nothing.
Yeah, what he said.
Right. Carlos Correa is the loudmouth. And the thing that gets me is watching them being interviewed after they win these games, against the Twins. And they're fawning over them. It's like, and what did you do? And how? And it's like, but they're cheaters. And how do we know, if I'm a conspiracy theorist, that something isn't going on right now?
Well, the league clearly loves them. So maybe they're facilitating.
It
Because
could
all of a
be.
sudden they couldn't play good. They were a bad baseball team most of the season. All of a sudden, while they had their moments above 500, they got into the playoffs as a sub 500 team.
Yeah. It's interesting that, to me, if you just, you know what you did, just play ball. Just don't ask the question. Don't answer the questions. No, because nobody's asking them, so it doesn't matter. They don't have to answer anything. But yeah, Carlos Correa is. I can't. I have a hard time. I'm not probably going to be able to watch, and to see them in Dodger Stadium is even worse.
That's going to be the bigger part. I could watch the game if they were in Oakland or somewhere else.
Right.
Just to keep up with them. Honestly, the more it goes, I think that a Yankees asterisk showdown, so that the Yankees can extract their pound of flesh from them in the playoffs, because they have a grievance against them as well.
Yes, that's
and then
true.
next season, during the regular season, when the Dodgers and the Asterisks are going to match up, the Dodgers can take it out on them then.
Right.
I don't want to see them in the World Series.
No,
I don't
want
care
to
who's
see
in the
that.
World Series, as long as it's not them. I don't care if they're playing the Marlins and it's an off season. I don't think Major League Baseball would let that happen anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And MLB is, if you're a conspiracy theorist, maybe they're pulling the strings because they want that Dodgers Asterisks World Series, because they know that's going to draw a lot of people in, because they know about the bad blood.
Well, we thought they might have been pulling strings with the White Sox and the A's, with whoever was running the scoreboard on the app.
Oh yeah, right. It was like right on there. It said they won the series. Actually, after game 2, it said they won game 2 when they hadn't, the White Sox. And then at the end of it, it said that the White Sox won the series.
Yeah.
Like, so if we read it here, then it's true.
It's true. I mentioned it. I shouldn't have, but I mentioned it to Planet Head, and he has a theory that all games are, in advance who's going to win. And I said, yeah, but the White Sox didn't win. He goes, well, that's because they were found out. So they had to go to plan B, which was the A's winning.
Maybe, I think he's overthinking that series. I don't think they cared that much about that series. Either way, whatever. They're more interested in other bigger names. Yeah.
Maybe just somebody who was running that, the app, put it in there. Either it was somebody that had no idea, or they were a really big White Sox fan and they were hoping that, if I put this in here, it will help them.
Whatever the glitch was, it started with game 2 saying that the White Sox won, even though they didn't. So it's going to be another crazy week in baseball. Not only are the division series, I don't know if all these matchups are great, but everything's in the bubble. All games will be played in the same location. Now, there will be the set where the first 2 games are the home team will be the higher seed. So the Dodgers will be the home team for the first 2 games, the Padres the next 2 games, and then the Dodgers for game 5 if necessary. We'll take a look at all that and how this week played out next week on SRBB. And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Next week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, did Garrett Cole finally earn his money? The Asterisks did what?
Hey, did you know that Josh Fields was a better postseason pitcher for the Dodgers than the Asterisks?
You're out!